Hey everyone, ready to dive into some long-term investing strategies? This is going to be a deep dive into some seriously insightful sources on building lasting wealth and financial freedom.
Absolutely, and I think what's really interesting about these sources is they go beyond the usual generic advice.
Right, it's not just about starting early and diversifying.
Yeah, forget get-rich-quick schemes. This is about the real deal. Strategies that can actually make a difference over time.
So no magic formulas then?
Nope. No magic formulas, but some pretty powerful principles, like the idea of compound interest.
Oh, compound interest. That always sounds a bit intimidating.
I know, it can seem like a complex concept, but think of it like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Okay, I like where this is going.
As it rolls, it picks up more snow, getting bigger and bigger. That's compound interest. Your money earns interest, and then that interest earns more interest, and so on. It's like a snowball effect for your wealth.
So the longer it rolls, the bigger it gets. So starting early is key.
Exactly, and one of the most fascinating things our sources highlighted is that starting early, even with small amounts, can lead to huge results thanks to this compound interest concept.
Give me an example.
Sure. One source pointed out that someone who invests $5,000 a year from age 25 to 35 could actually end up with more money at retirement than someone who invests $10,000 a year from age 35 to 65. That's the power of compound interest over time.
Wow, 5 years of investing early outweighs 20 years of investing later. That's pretty mind-blowing. So time is our biggest asset.
Absolutely. And that's why maximizing those retirement accounts is so important. Your 401k, your Roth IRA, they're like turbocharged savings vehicles.
Okay, so we've got 401ks and IRAs. What's the difference, and which one should I prioritize?
Well, one source mentioned free money when talking about 401k.
Free money, sign me up.
That's the magic of employer matching contributions. Many companies will actually match a portion of your contributions, essentially doubling your investment.
So if my company offers a match, I should contribute at least enough to take full advantage of it.
Absolutely. It's a guaranteed return on your investment. Don't leave that on the table.
Got it. 401ks first, if there's a match. But what about Roth IRAs? Why are they so special?
Well, with a Roth IRA, you contribute after-tax dollars.
After tax. So what's the benefit of that?
The benefit is that your money grows tax-free, and you won't owe taxes on withdrawals during retirement.
So it's like planting a seed that grows into a fruit tree, and then you get to enjoy all those delicious fruits, your retirement income, completely tax-free.
That's a great analogy. It's a pretty sweet deal.
It does sound pretty sweet. But should I always prioritize maxing out my 401k first, even if it doesn't have the best investment options?
That's a great question and a common dilemma. It really depends on your individual circumstances and risk tolerance. If your 401k has limited investment options or high fees, it might make sense to contribute enough to get the full employer match and then focus on maxing out your Roth IRA, which typically offers a wider range of investment choices.
So it's all about finding the right balance then.
Exactly. Choosing the accounts that best align with your needs and goals.
Got it. But speaking of maximizing growth, one of the sources really emphasized reinvesting dividends. It seemed like a pretty simple yet powerful strategy.
Absolutely. Reinvesting those dividends can make a huge difference over time, but it's often overlooked.
So how does reinvesting dividends actually work?
It's basically using those earnings to buy even more shares of the investment, which generates even more dividends. It's a snowball effect of growth, like planting a tree and then using the seeds from that tree to plant even more trees, creating a whole forest of wealth.
I love that visual. So we're basically using our earnings to buy more trees, accelerating our path to a lush financial forest. But sometimes those investment statements can be confusing, and it's hard to know exactly what's going on. Where do those dividends come from?
Well, it's basically a share of the company's profits. Think of it like owning a piece of a pie, and the company is slicing off little pieces of its profits and giving them to you as a shareholder. And by reinvesting those pie slices, you're essentially growing your ownership stake in the pie, leading to even bigger slices in the future.
So more pie for everyone. But I have to admit, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed by all the choices when it comes to investments. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Where do I even begin?
It can definitely feel overwhelming, but you don't have to be a stock-picking guru to be successful. One of the strategies that came up repeatedly in our sources is the power of index funds.
Index funds. Refresh my memory. What are those again?
Think of an index fund like a pre-made, diversified portfolio. Instead of trying to pick individual stocks, you're buying a basket of stocks that represents a specific market index, like the S&P 500.
Okay, so it's like buying a whole orchard instead of trying to plant individual fruit trees.
Exactly. It's a much easier and less risky way to diversify your investments.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's so many different index funds out there. How do I choose the right one?
Now, that is a great question. You've got index funds that track the entire stock market, some that focus on specific sectors like technology or healthcare, and even some that focus on specific investment styles like growth or value.
Wow, so many options. But honestly, with all this talk about investing, I can't help but feel a little intimidated by market volatility. What about when the market gets bumpy?
You're absolutely right. Market volatility is a reality, and it can be unnerving. One of our sources compared it to riding a roller coaster.
Oh, I hate roller coasters.
Well, the market can feel like that sometimes with its ups and downs, but remember, the roller coaster ultimately goes forward.
So even when it feels scary, we just need to hold on tight and trust that the ride will eventually take us where we want to go.
Exactly. Having a long-term plan and sticking to it is key, even when things get turbulent.
I'm starting to see the importance of having a solid plan and not panicking when things get bumpy. But what if I need help creating that plan? Or what if I'm just not sure where to start?
That's where a financial advisor can be incredibly helpful. Think of them like a financial coach who can guide you, help you define your goals, assess your risk tolerance, and create a personalized investment strategy.
So it's like having a financial expert in my corner to help me navigate the complexities of investing and make informed decisions.
Exactly. They can be an invaluable resource, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure about how to get started.
Okay, I'm starting to see the value in seeking professional guidance. But with so many financial advisors out there, how do I even know how to choose the right one?
That's a great question, and one we'll dive deeper into a bit later. But for now, here's a quick tip. Look for a fiduciary. That means they are legally obligated to act in your best interest. Crucial when trusting someone with your financial future.
Okay, fiduciary, got it. I'll be keeping that in mind. But for now, let's talk about something that I know is super important, but also really easy to overlook. Minimizing those pesky fees and taxes.
Oh, absolutely. Those fees and taxes, they might seem small, but they can really eat into your returns over time. It's like death by 1,000 cuts.
Ouch, that sounds painful. So how do we avoid those cuts and keep more of our hard-earned money?
Well, one easy way to lower fees is to opt for low-cost investment options, like those index funds we discussed earlier. Many have expense ratios of less than 0.1%.
So we're talking about paying less than $1 for every $1,000 we invest. That seems pretty reasonable.
Right. And when it comes to minimizing taxes, one strategy is to hold your investments for the long term. If you sell an investment after holding it for more than a year, you typically qualify for the lower long-term capital gains tax rate.
So patience pays off in more ways than one. Not only does it help us ride out market fluctuations, but it can also reduce our tax bill.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Okay, I'm definitely starting to see the importance of taking a long-term perspective when it comes to investing. But I have to admit, sometimes I feel like I'm constantly playing catch-up when it comes to learning about finance. There's always something new to discover.
You're not alone. The financial landscape is always changing. But don't get overwhelmed.
Easier said than done, right? So, how do we stay informed without getting completely overloaded with information?
I always advise focusing on the fundamentals. Don't chase the latest hot stock tip or try to time the market. Stick to those core principles we've been talking about. Starting early, diversifying, minimizing fees, investing for the long term.
Got it. Master the basics first.
Exactly. And when it comes to staying informed, find a few trusted sources of information that resonate with you.
Well, hopefully this deep dive is one of those trusted sources.
Exactly. Maybe a couple of reputable financial websites or blogs too. But the key is to avoid information overload. Focus on those core investing principles.
Okay, so stick to the fundamentals and don't get bogged down by all the noise. That seems like a solid approach.
Absolutely. Investing doesn't have to be complicated. It's about making smart choices consistently over time.
Well, I'm feeling much more confident about my ability to navigate the world of long-term investing, thanks to your insights.
My pleasure. Glad to help.
But before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I have one final question for you. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who is just starting out on their financial journey?
That's a great question. My advice would be to start by defining your financial goals. What do you want to achieve with your money? Buying a home, retiring early, traveling the world.
So connect those financial decisions to dreams and aspirations.
Exactly. When you have a clear vision of your goals, you can start creating a plan to make them a reality.
That's powerful advice. It's all about aligning our actions with our vision for the future.
Exactly. And with a clear sense of purpose, it's much easier to stay motivated and make choices that support your long-term vision.
Well, that's a fantastic note to end on for now. We'll be back in just a moment to continue our deep dive, so stay tuned.
Having those goals in mind is really like setting your financial GPS, right? It gives you direction, helps you stay focused on the journey.
I love that, a financial GPS. And speaking of journeys, one of our sources talked about the mental game of investing. Like how our emotions can sometimes, well, kind of sabotage things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Our emotions can definitely get in the way. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth repeating. It's so easy to freak out when the market takes a dip, you know?
Oh, totally. I've been there. So how do we avoid making those rash decisions? Like when our portfolio is on a roller coaster ride?
Well, I think it starts with remembering why you're investing in the first place. What are your goals? Retirement, buying a house, your kids' education. Once you have that clear vision, it's easier to ride out those market fluctuations.
It's like having a bigger why, something to keep you grounded.
Exactly. And remember that those daily ups and downs are just noise. We're in this for the long haul.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those headlines about market crashes, they can really get to you.
They can. It's why having a solid plan is so important. And a trusted advisor can be a huge help too.
Right, someone to help you navigate those choppy waters. Okay, so we've got goals, a plan, maybe an advisor. It's starting to feel like building a house, a strong foundation.
Exactly. Laying the groundwork. And speaking of foundations, let's talk about budgeting. I know it's not the most glamorous topic, but...
Budget. Yeah, not my favorite word. Just makes me think of restrictions, deprivation.
I hear you. A lot of people feel that way, but think of it more like a roadmap. It's not about restricting your spending. It's about making conscious choices about how to use your money.
Okay, so not about deprivation, more about making choices. But I'm still not sure I see the connection between budgeting and building wealth. Isn't it just about tracking expenses?
Well, tracking expenses is definitely a part of it, but it's just the first step. The real power of budgeting is that it helps you understand where your money is going. It helps you identify areas where you might be overspending, and then you can free up more money for saving and investing.
So it's like a financial self-assessment.
Exactly. You're basically the CEO of your finances, right? Making those decisions about how to allocate resources.
CEO of my finances. I like the sound of that. But I've tried budgeting before, and it always just seemed like a chore. Any tips for making it less painful?
Oh, there's so many great tools available these days. Budgeting apps can track your spending, categorize transactions.
Okay, I've heard of those, like Mint and Personal Capital. Do they actually connect to your bank accounts?
Yeah, a lot of them do. It makes tracking so much easier than doing it manually. And you can even set up alerts for when you're nearing your budget limit.
That's cool, like a little reminder system. So those apps can really help simplify things. But what about actually creating the budget itself? Any advice on getting started?
Start with your big rocks, those essential expenses like housing, food, transportation, the things you can't live without. Once those are covered, then you can look at discretionary spending. Okay, so prioritize the essentials first, then see where we can trim the fat. But sometimes it feels like there's just not enough money to go around, even after cutting back.
I know that feeling. A lot of people think you need to be making a ton of money to start saving and investing. But it's really more about mindset than income,
It's not about how much we earn, but how we manage what we have.
Exactly. Even small amounts saved consistently can make a big difference.
That's encouraging. Small steps, consistency, that's what matters.
And you know what else can really help? Automation.
Oh yeah, we talked about automating savings earlier, but I'm guessing it applies to investing too.
Absolutely. It's a great way to stay consistent and avoid those emotional pitfalls we were talking about.
Okay, so how does it work?
It's basically setting up automatic transfers to your investment accounts. Maybe a specific amount each month, or even a percentage of your paycheck.
Set it and forget it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes the decision-making out of the equation. It's like having a financial robot working for you 24/7.
Love it. Less work for me.
And less chance of making impulsive decisions based on fear or greed.
Right, because we're not constantly checking our accounts and freaking out about every little dip. Okay, automation, that's definitely going on my to-do list. But I have to admit, I still feel a bit intimidated by all those different investment options. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. How do I even know where to begin?
Don't worry, you don't need to be a financial expert to create a successful portfolio. One of the most important things is diversification. Remember that. Not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right, diversification.
Yeah.
Spread the risk.
Exactly. Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't build a house on just one pillar, right? You'd want to distribute the weight across multiple pillars for stability. It's the same with your investments. By spreading your investments across different asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe even some alternative investments, you're building a more resilient portfolio that can withstand those market fluctuations.
Okay, so diversification is like building a strong foundation for our investments. I like that analogy. But I'm still a little fuzzy on those different asset classes. What exactly are stocks, bonds, and alternative investments?
Sure. Let's break it down. Stocks represent ownership in a company. When you buy a stock, you're essentially buying a small piece of that company. Bonds, on the other hand, are like loans that you make to a company or government. They typically offer a fixed rate of return and are considered less risky than stocks. And alternative investments can be a really broad category. Think things like real estate, commodities, private equity, and more.
Okay, so stocks, bonds, alternatives, each with their own level of risk.
Right, and the right mix for you is going to depend on your individual circumstances, risk tolerance, your goals. And that's another area where an advisor can be really helpful, right? They can help you assess your risk tolerance, understand the different asset classes, and put together a portfolio that makes sense for you.
Makes sense. It's like having a financial architect helping to design and build that investment structure. But speaking of building for the future, what about retirement planning? I know it's important, but honestly, it feels so far away.
I get it. It's easy to put it off.
Yeah.
But the sooner you start, the better off you'll be. It's like planting a tree, right? The earlier you plant it, the more time it has to grow.
Okay, so no more procrastinating on retirement planning.
Yeah.
But where do I even begin?
Well, a good place to start is by imagining your ideal retirement. What do you want it to look like? Where do you want to live? What do you want to do with your time?
So start by dreaming big. Then figure out how to make it happen.
Exactly. And remember, there are tons of resources to help you. Financial advisors, retirement calculators, online tools.
Right, it's not like we have to figure it all out on our own.
Definitely not. And speaking of figuring things out, one of the biggest questions people have is, how much do I actually need to save? It can feel like a moving target.
Yeah, a moving target. How do we even estimate that?
Well, those online calculators can be helpful. They take into account things like your current age, income, expected retirement age. But it's important to remember that they are just estimates.
Okay, so use them as a starting point, but don't take them as gospel, and personalize them for our own situation.
Exactly. And again, an advisor can help you create a more personalized plan, one that takes all your unique needs and goals into consideration.
Okay, so having a plan, seeking guidance, using those calculators as a starting point, that's all helpful. But what if we're already behind on our retirement savings? Is it too late to catch up?
It's never too late to start. Even if you're starting later than you hoped, there are still things you can do to boost your savings.
Okay, so it's not a lost cause. What are some ways to play catch up?
Well, even increasing your contributions by a small amount can make a difference. Every little bit helps. You could also consider working a few extra years or taking on a side hustle to generate some additional income.
So get creative. Explore different options.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your financial future. Don't let age or perceived setbacks discourage you. You can still achieve your retirement goals.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get discouraged and give up before we even really start. But it sounds like there's always hope, as long as we're willing to put in the effort.
Absolutely. And remember, retirement doesn't have to be boring. It's a chance to pursue passions, explore new things.
Right. It's not the end, it's a new beginning.
Exactly. It's about designing a retirement that you're excited about, one that feels fulfilling and meaningful.
I like that, a retirement filled with purpose and joy. But speaking of purpose and joy, one of the sources talk about how our mindset can affect our financial success. It's not just about managing money, but also managing our thoughts and beliefs about money.
Ah, yes, the psychology of money. It's a fascinating topic.
Totally. So how do our thoughts and beliefs actually influence our financial decisions?
Well, if we believe money is scarce or that we're not good with it, we tend to make decisions that reflect those beliefs.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. Our beliefs shape our reality. But the good news is we can shift those beliefs. We can cultivate a more positive money mindset.
Okay, but how do we actually do that? It can't be easy to change those deep-seated beliefs.
You're right, it takes effort. But one thing you can do is pay attention to your self-talk about money. Are your thoughts supportive or negative? Limiting.
Become more mindful of those internal conversations.
Exactly. And then challenge those negative beliefs. Replace them with more positive and empowering ones.
So instead of saying, I'm terrible with money, I could say, I'm learning and growing.
That's it. It's about choosing to focus on the positive aspects of your financial journey.
But what if we've experienced financial trauma? Or have really deep fears around money?
That's a great point. Financial trauma is real, and it can have a huge impact. It might be helpful to seek professional guidance in those cases, a therapist or a financial counselor who specializes in that area.
So professional help can be key. It's not always a DIY situation.
Right. And remember, you're not alone. Lots of people struggle with money anxieties and fears. There are resources out there.
That makes me feel better. It's okay to ask for help. But for those of us who haven't necessarily experienced trauma but still have some negative money beliefs, are there other ways to shift our mindset?
Absolutely. One powerful practice is gratitude. Take some time each day to appreciate the abundance in your life, even the small things.
Ooh, that's a good one. Focus on what we have, not what we lack.
Exactly. It helps shift our perspective. It attracts more of what we appreciate.
So gratitude for our finances.
Gratitude for everything, including our finances. It's all connected.
I'm starting to see that. It's not just about managing money, it's about managing our thoughts and beliefs about money.
Precisely. And by shifting those thoughts and beliefs, we open ourselves up to greater abundance.
Okay, I love that. It makes the journey to financial freedom feel more holistic somehow, more fulfilling.
That's the goal. Financial well-being isn't just about the numbers, it's about creating a life that feels good, a life of purpose, joy, and abundance.
And aligning our financial decisions with our values, right?
Absolutely. It's about using money as a tool to create the life we desire, to make a positive impact.
So how can we make sure our spending is aligned with our values? How do we make sure our money is going toward the things that truly matter?
One thing you can do is create a values-based budget. Start by identifying your core values, the things that are most important to you.
So like, if someone values experiences over material possessions, their budget might reflect that by allocating more money to travel and adventure.
Exactly. And someone who prioritizes giving back to their community might allocate a portion of their income to charitable donations.
It's a way to make sure our money is reflecting what we truly care about.
Precisely. It's about living authentically.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've talked about overcoming mental blocks, cultivating a healthy money mindset, aligning our spending with our values. So much good stuff.
It's been a great exploration of conscious finance. And as we wrap up the second part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
Okay, hit me with it.
Imagine money is no longer an obstacle. What would you do with your life? What dreams would you pursue? What impact would you make on the world?
Wow, that is a powerful question. It really makes you think about what's truly important.
Exactly. And once you have that vision in mind, you can start taking small steps today to make it a reality.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Makes you think. It's like we get so focused on just, making ends meet that we forget to dream a little.
Absolutely. I think that happens to a lot of people. We get stuck in that scarcity mindset, thinking there's never enough. But when we shift to a mindset of abundance, well, that's when things start to change.
So true. Abundance versus scarcity, it's a whole different way of looking at things.
Right. And one of the sources talked about how important it is to, debunk those common money myths, the ones that hold us back.
Oh yeah, money myths. Those are always interesting. Like, are they true? Are they not true? I feel like we've all heard so many of them growing up.
Oh, definitely. And they can be so persistent. But a lot of times they're just not true. And they can really sabotage our efforts to build wealth.
Okay, so let's bust some myths. What are some of the biggest ones that we should be aware of?
Well, one that I hear all the time is that investing is only for rich people.
Oh yeah, I used to think that too. Like, you need a ton of money to even get started.
Right. But that's just not the case anymore. With online platforms and fractional shares, you can start investing with very small amounts.
That's a game changer for sure. It makes investing accessible to, pretty much everyone.
Exactly. The key is to just start somewhere, even if it's just a few dollars a week, and then stay consistent.
Consistency, that's what I keep hearing.
It's the key to success in so many areas of life, investing included.
So what other money myths should we be on the lookout for?
Another big one is the idea that you need to be a financial whiz to manage your money.
Oh yeah, I definitely used to feel that way. All those complicated terms and strategies, it can be intimidating.
It can, but honestly, personal finance doesn't have to be that complicated.
So we don't need a degree in finance to be good with money.
Nope. Just need to understand those basic principles. The ones we've been talking about. Start early, diversify,
Right.
minimize fees, invest for the long haul. That's a great foundation.
Keep it simple. Focus on the fundamentals. I can do that.
Exactly. And remember, there are always resources available if you need help. Books, articles, podcasts, financial advisors. You don't have to go it alone.
Right? Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
I totally agree. But speaking of things that can be tough to talk about, one of our sources mentioned financial red flags. Those warning signs that something might be off with our finances.
Ooh, red flags. What are some of those?
Well, one of the most common ones is living paycheck to paycheck. That feeling of always being just one step ahead of the bills.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that, unfortunately. So what can you do if you're stuck in that cycle?
It's all about taking a close look at your spending, creating a budget, and then exploring ways to increase your income. Maybe ask for a raise, look for a side hustle, or learn some new skills that can lead to better paying opportunities.
So it's about being proactive,
Yeah,
taking control of the situation.
exactly. And remember, it's not always about cutting back and depriving yourself. It can also be about finding ways to earn more.
Right, focus on both sides of the equation. I
Yeah.
like that. What are some other red flags we should be aware of?
Another big one is high interest debt. Credit cards, payday loans, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that can be a slippery slope for sure.
Yeah.
Those interest charges can really add up.
They can. And if you're already in debt, it's important to come up with a plan to pay it down systematically. There are different methods you can use: the snowball method, the avalanche method.
Okay, so do your research and find a strategy that works for you.
Exactly. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, remember there are resources available. Credit counselors, financial advisors, they can help you navigate the process.
It's so important to remember that we don't have to do this alone. There are people who can help. But okay, so we've talked about budgeting, investing, retirement planning. What about insurance?
I know it's important, but honestly, it's not the most exciting topic.
I know. It's not exactly a party conversation starter, but it's so important for protecting your financial well-being.
Okay, remind me why.
Insurance is all about mitigating risk. It's about protecting yourself from financial loss in case of unexpected events. Think of it like a safety net.
Okay, a safety net. That makes sense. So what are the most important types of insurance to have?
Well, health insurance is crucial. It helps cover those medical expenses, which can be astronomical.
Yeah, no kidding. Healthcare costs are scary. What else?
Car insurance, if you have a car, protects you in case of an accident. And homeowners insurance, if you own a home, protects your property from things like fire, theft, natural disasters. Okay, so those are the big ones. Health, car, home. What about life insurance?
Life insurance is important too, though it's often overlooked, especially if you have people who depend on your income.
Right, like a spouse or children.
Exactly. Life insurance provides a death benefit that can help your loved ones cover expenses, pay off debts if you're no longer around.
It's a way to take care of your family even when you're gone.
Exactly. It can provide a lot of peace of mind.
Well, we've covered so much ground today. Compound interest, long-term investing, budgeting, the psychology of money, insurance. It's been quite a deep dive.
It has, and I hope our listeners feel empowered to take control of their finances.
Me too. It's been such an informative conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. It's been great chatting with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you've gained some valuable knowledge and feel inspired to create a brighter financial future.